You may begin.
Good evening. Welcome everyone to the regular meeting on Monday, April 8th, 2024. I call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Here.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Mayor Infante.
Here.
Finley Henderson, honorary mayor for the day.
Here.
Thank you.
Let us all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Place your hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with
Liberty and justice for all.
You stay right here. Okay. Finley has met with our department heads and city manager today, and I was asking if she might give us a little debriefing. Tell us what you learned today.
I learned about the fire department, all the water, how you clean it in the city, and how you how a building gets done.
Wow, not bad. And any recommendations for any of us up here? Do you have any homework?
She had an idea for a project. You want to tell what that was?
A mini golf course for families to have fun. Just
Oh, good. Did you talk to our Parks and Recreation Department about that? Okay, great. And then on behalf of the city, here is I understood you like donuts. You know how hard it is to find fresh donuts after 2 p.m.? It's near impossible. My wife stepped up and made a run, and we got you something. Thank you for being mayor for the day. I think Mayor Mayor Mark has taken this to a new level, taken it a bit serious. But we're glad you're here today, and thank you for running our city. We appreciate it.
thank you.
Will you come again?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, great job. And I like your salary. It's really just right on point. So, Mark, you're all smiles, and I'm happy to see you vertical on
Thank
Zoom.
you, Dave. Excuse me. I apologize. I'm a little ill and I can't be at the meeting, and so I can't preside over the meeting. So I have asked Mayor Pro Tem Dave Brown to preside over the meeting this evening, but I will be available for questions, comments, and
Very well, thank you. Well, we'll start with proclamations and commendations. On behalf of Mayor Infante, we have a proclamation here today for Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. Whereas people of all racial, cultural, and economic backgrounds fall victim to sexual assault, sexual violence is widespread and impacts every person in this community. Rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment harm our community, and statistics show child sexual abuse prevention must be a priority to confront the reality that 1 in 3 women will experience sexual violence in their lifetime, and 1 in 4 men will experience sexual violence in their lifetime. And whereas rape and sexual violence of all kinds continues to occur at an alarming rate, the California having the most reported rapes in the United States, and with the Department of Justice stating that an American is sexually assaulted every 98 seconds in the United States, and whereas emotional and physical scars resulting from sexual violence are often permanent, therefore working together to educate this community about sexual violence prevention, supporting survivors and speaking out against harmful attitudes and actions is so important. And whereas a coalition of organizations exist which directly confronts this crisis, including North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center, law enforcement agencies, churches, health care providers, and volunteers from the community that serve these agencies who are helping in the effort to end sexual assault. And whereas prevention is possible when everyone gets involved, increasing education, awareness, and community involvement, recognizing the compassion and dedication of the individuals involved in this effort, and noting the challenges of the victims, survivors of sexual assault, and their families and friends as they struggle to cope with the reality of sexual violence. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on behalf of Mayor Fonte, Mayor, along with the City Council and the City of Solvang, California, do hereby proclaim April 2024 as Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month in the City of Solvang, and in doing so, urge all Americans to support sexual assault survivors, including when survivors reach out and disclose abuse. In witness thereof, Mayor Fonte have undue set his hand and have caused the official seal of the city, Solvang, to be affixed to this 8th day of April 2024. Thank you. Do we have a representative?
Yeah, do a child abuse one?
I'm sorry?
Do a child abuse awareness one?
That'll be the next one.
Okay, then I'll stand here and wait for all to go.
You'll be representing both? Very well. Okay. Child abuse, this is another proclamation, National Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. Whereas child abuse and neglect are a community condition and problem, and finding solutions depends on involvement among people in the community. And whereas the effects of child abuse and neglect are felt by communities and need to be addressed by the entire community, and whereas the San Ynez Valley People Helping People and its CAPC, Child Abuse Prevention Council partners, have been committed to educating this community on child abuse and neglect, and are sponsoring several events throughout the month to heighten public awareness of abuse in the county of Santa Barbara. These events will provide information and materials that support families to prevent child mistreatment, maltreatment, and celebrate people who work with and support children and families. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, youth organizations, religious organizations, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, the business community, and residents. And whereas all residents should become more aware of the importance of prevention in the community and become involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe, nurturing environment. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Mark Infante, along with the City Council and the City of Solvang, California, do hereby proclaim April 2024 as National Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month in the City of Solvang, and call upon all residents, community agencies, religious organizations, businesses, and medical facilities to increase their participation in the effort to prevent child abuse. In witness thereof, Mayor Fonte has undue set my hand and have caused the official seal of the City of Solvang to be affixed this 8th day of April 2024. And please come to the microphone and tell us a little bit about these two proclamations.
Thank you so much, Council. My name is Allison Wales. I'm the Associate Director of the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center, going on 30 years doing this, and proud that the connections we've made across the North County. As we stand here today, it is easy to be united in a cause that demands our attention, our compassion, and our action. April marks the observance of Child Abuse Awareness Month as well as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It is a reminder of the vulnerability of our children and the need to continue to educate our community on what sexual assault, harassment, and abuse are. Child abuse takes many forms, from physical and emotional harm to neglect and exploitation, of which you have seen our commercials and outreach regarding CSEC, commercially sexually exploited children in the county. For the past several years, we have planted pinwheels across the county to raise awareness about child abuse. This occurs in our community. The community region in 2023 had 922 referrals were investigated. That includes the Solvang area. In the Santa Maria region in 2023, there were 1,911 referrals investigated. This year, we did not plant over 1,500 pinwheels across the North County. We chose just Guadalupe since they were the last city we planted. And hopefully our partner through CAPC, People Helping People, will be planting here in the North County and or in the Solvang area and at schools. But in Guadalupe, we planted 1 in 5, and that was we planted 395 pinwheels at City Hall in Guadalupe. This month serves as a call to action in urging us to raise awareness, to educate and advocate survivors everywhere. Each of us has a role to play as advocates, whether it's volunteering, speaking out against abuse, or, may I say, attending our 50th anniversary auction on May 4th that is coming up, and appropriately named Raise Them Up. We hope you are there, and the information can be found on our website. Thank you for this recognition and raising our center up for over 50 years for the hard work our advocates and staff do every day, and we do appreciate your support. Thank you.
First day on the job. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'll move this. Okay, one more proclamation. Fair Housing Month. Whereas the Fair Housing Act enacted in April 11, 1968, enshrined into federal law the goal of eliminating racial segregation and ending housing discrimination in the United States, and whereas the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination in housing based on race, color, religion, sex, familiar status, national origin, and disability, and commits recipients of federal funds to affirmatively further fair housing in their communities. And whereas the city of Solvang is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair housing and equal housing opportunities for all, and whereas our social fabric, the economy, health, and environment are strengthened in diverse, inclusive communities, and whereas more than 50 years after the passage of the Fair Housing Act, discrimination persists and many communities remain segregated, and whereas acts of housing discrimination and barriers to equal housing opportunities are repugnant to a common sense of decency and fairness, now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Mark Infante, along with the City Council of the City of Solvang, California, do hereby proclaim April 2024 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Solvang as an inclusive community committed to fair housing and to promoting appropriate activities by private and public entities to provide and advocate for equal housing opportunities for all residents and prospective residents of the City of Solvang. In witness thereof, I, Mr. Mark Infante, have hereunto set my hand and have caused the official seal of the City of Solvang to be affixed this 8th day of April 2024. Is there anyone here from the Housing Authority or Fair Housing? Well, thank you. We'll move that. That also needs to be signed. Thank you. Okay. Moving on, we have a, thank you very much. Have a presentation from the wastewater department presentation. Are they prepared for that?
Yeah, have Nathan come up here. In the meantime, introducing it, as I've talked about since I've been here, my intent is to provide the opportunity for all departments to do a presentation before council. Most of them have done so. It's Nathan's turn. Mike did it a month or so ago. And we were going to do it last time, but we had a long meeting scheduled, so we postponed it to this week. So take it away, Nathan.
All right. I'm Nathan Giacento, the wastewater division supervisor, and put together a presentation on what we do. So this is a map of the sewer system for the city of Solvang. We have 31 miles of sewer line and about 645 manholes, 85 cleanouts, 2 lift stations, and 2 force mains that we take care of along with the wastewater treatment plant. We'll start with the collection system. This is the weekly duties of the collection system operator along with usually one other operator to work on the monthly jetting schedule, cleaning the sewer basins, which is different sections of sewer system that branch together at the bottom. Inspecting off-site manholes, clearing weeds, check the Alisal Creek crossings because there's some issues out there. Record everything in the flushing log, assist the water division with digging, maintain the flushing log, maintain the list of infrastructure that needs maintenance and repair, and then we can go back and work on manholes that need to be raised or places that need to be fixed. And then also clean and inspect the VACON truck and the jetting trailer. This is a list of the regulatory sampling that we do monthly, weekly, daily. As you can see, there's quite a few things we have to sample for and send to the state, and also just to figure out how the plant's running. This is a picture of root treatment. We do a lot of this in areas that we can't access to clean very often. So we every 2 years we have Duke's Roots come out and put this stuff in the sewer system in a lot of the remote places so that we don't get root intrusion in the sewer lines and have blockages that we don't get to quickly because we don't know they're happening. So moving on to the work at the plant, this is all the daily, weekly, and monthly sampling for process control at the plant. This is how we maintain, keep the plant running properly by doing all of these tests. And this is a picture of what the jetting nozzle looks like on the end of that truck. And that's a picture of it working inside of a sewer line, and that's how it uses that high pressure water to get rid of all of the debris that's in the lines. And that's a before and after picture of a real good hydrojetter. Generally, they're not as bad as the before around here, but that's what they look like afterwards. It's how we get it out. This is a picture of hydro excavation. So when the water department has areas in the streets that have a lot of other utilities in the ground, we will use the truck to dig the holes to fix the water lines so that we don't break any pipes in the ground. And that's a close-up of them using the nozzle to soften the dirt, and then that tube sucks it all up and they don't even have to shovel it. That's a map of the wastewater treatment plant, a diagram of what all the components are and where it is. It's on the other side of the San Ynez River, just off the end of Fjord Drive. This is what we do daily in the lab. The operator, the person that's designated to operate for the week will be doing all of this stuff during the week. And I'd read it all, but it's long. So you can go. And then the plant maintenance, so we rotate between operators, maintenance, and collections. And so the maintenance guy will be working on all of these things during his turn being maintenance. That is a picture of the bar screen. We showed that to the mayor this morning. This is why when they say flushable, it's not flushable. It just comes here and then we have to deal with it at the plant. So if you think about the flushable wipes and the feminine napkins and those kind of things. Just, we have to deal with them at the wastewater plant. They don't just go away. And that is when we rebuilt the bar screen. So we had a crane come in and pull it out and then took it all apart and put all new pieces in and put it back together. These are all things that we do, you know, as operators besides operate the plant. This is a couple of years ago, we rebuilt the screenings compactor, and that's why we have a crane on our truck, and we haul all the equipment off the headworks and put all the new parts in, put it back in, and put it back in service. That's another picture of it. So all of those things you saw in the bar screen, they go into that machine, which has a bunch of little teeth and grinds it all up and washes it and then spits it out that tube into a trash can. That is, those are the old mixing pumps that we recently got rid of, but that's what we had to do to change those pumps was bring a crane in, bolt that cage on the top, and then pick it up and stick it into a tube inside the tank. And that's one of the times we had the tanks empty. We had to grind all the rust off and weld up some holes in the piping because we had an air leak. Those are other things operators do. And we put a new auger in the grit removal ourselves, and that actually we installed that auger when it was new, and then we rebuilt it recently. That's grit pump. We replaced the grit pump. We put a new impeller on it, a new seal, and put it back in. That's a picture of the new aeration system. That's with clear water in there. That's what the new diffusers look like. Much better than the old jet system. That is our crew helping Cushman install the new blowers for the aeration upgrade project. And that is a picture of the lift station down, that's 25 feet in the ground. We have to go down that ladder, down that tube every week and check on those pumps, exercise all the valves down there. Those are flight pumps. Those have been a lifesaver for overtime because they work really well. That's the hatch that you have to go down to get in there. And that's another picture of the pump room from the other side. Those are the kind of things that get stuck in the check valves, and those are the rags we have to pull out when we pull those pumps out. That's why, again, not everything's flushable. That we went in and had to remove the old liner out of the wet well because it failed and fell in, and we put on rain suits and had to go in there and cut it all out before they relined it. That's a picture from the top. And then that's the new coating. That was afterwards. We had it coated. It's all nice and it doesn't fall off like the old liner. And that's the metering manhole that has our flow and San Inez's flow. That's where the flows are taken. That's where they're read in that metering room. That is a pump from the Alisal lift station. We'll replace those with flights also, because they don't plug up. They work great. And then there's other things that we do, and we're not just wastewater operators. That is the Alamo Pintado Creek Trail. We went down there and cut all the trees out of there, graded it all out for the council at the time. So that's the hiking trail that we had to establish during that time. And then we worked with maintenance to recoat the bridge. And that's when we epoxy coated all the cracks in the bridge for the earthquake safety, whatever they did to the bridge. And we built pickleball courts. That's us finishing the retaining wall. And we installed some bus shelters. And that we did some tree removal. That's clearing the road, getting trees off the road. And that was a storm a few years ago. Those are the storm drains on Alisal we had to dig out because maintenance was shorthanded for a while, and we need everybody here when there's a storm like that. So that's about it. Got any questions for me?
I do. Nathan, how long have you been doing this?
24 years.
And how many times do you think roughly that you're in a groove and things are going, and then Sacramento throws something new at you? How many times has that happened since you've been there?
You know, a couple of times, but more recently than
Yeah.
anything. I mean,
The
depends.
new aeration?
It depends. We went for a lot of years just having, you know, status quo on our limits, and then you get a new person in the office and they're like, hey, it looks like you were supposed to have a total nitrogen limit, not a nitrate limit. Well, to have a nitrate limit's easy. You just don't make nitrates.
Uh-huh.
So we were asked if we could try to, you know, remove nitrogen, which we figured out how to do with the plant the way it was, but running everything on the ragged edge. So an aeration upgrade was needed to make it easier. It's somewhat easier. It honestly, it's still not that easy. So with the nitrogen limit, we're like, okay, well, that's fine. And then, you know, then we get another representative that's even worse. And they started this basin objectives. So originally we were putting the San Ynez basin objectives, which is really, really strict. And it was going to be almost impossible to meet the limits that they were enforcing, which is why we were talking about RO and we were talking about reuse and we were talking about all these things. And in the meantime, we were able to prove, you know, we're not discharging it into the San Ynez Basin. We're discharging into the basin between the Santa Rita Basin and the San Ynez Basin. So we were able to get our limits changed. The nitrogen limit's not changed, but the other ones are. So we're still going to have to address sodium and chloride, which has been an issue since the 80s. I'm looking back at old records, it wasn't low then, and it's about the same now. So, I mean, that's the biggest hurdle. But there was a long time where it was pretty much the same for a long, long time.
All right, thanks.
So the wastewater treatment plant, that deals with stuff that comes out of our sewers.
Right.
It doesn't deal with stormwater?
No.
Do you deal at all with stormwater?
We do not treat stormwater at the plant. There are some plants in the world that do. They're called a combined system, but they usually have much bigger catch basins to hold it in order to treat it at a more slower rate. But this system is a closed system, and it's only sewage.
Okay, thank you.
What is your, I guess, most common maintenance problem? Is it the flushable things or clean out the grates or?
The most common maintenance problem is at the plant would be, you know, the bar screening, the rags coming in, trying to keep that from getting into the plant.
My point is there an educational process to, you know, remind people that what is and is not flushable, or is there
Right,
any
and we
outreach that
have
could be done?
We have put out a few flyers in the past. Plus, there are you know, City of Santa Maria has commercials on the radio saying what's flushable, what's not. We have put out stuff in the water bills before, but it doesn't always work, especially with hotels and all that.
Can you go back a couple of slides? I had a question on one of the slides.
Sure.
I think it's second to the end,
Second to the end.
thereabouts. Right around the tree removal work.
Why the truck tires off the ground 3 feet?
Yeah, why is that?
Well, it's a 1-ton truck, and when you get that truck off center a little bit, it doesn't flex like you would think a 4-wheel drive would, because it's so stiff that it'll pick one tire up off the ground.
Okay, I just, please, safety first.
Right.
For
It was
your
on
team
the
and
road.
everybody, okay.
It was just backed in a little
Okay,
off camber.
it's a safety moment here, opportunity, okay? Thank you. Anything else?
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you, Nathan.
Appreciate what
All
you do,
right.
Nathan.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we allow for public communications that are non-agenda items and consent items. All these? You can address the council on items that are not on the agenda. And then You have a time limit of 3 minutes. At the end of 3 minutes, a little beeper will go off. So will your microphone, okay? So your microphone will end and you'll be asked to sit down or exit. So with that, we'll get started with Barbara Allen.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Allen. I'm the current president of the Mission Oaks Homeowners Association. I've lived in the valley for over 36 years. I've spoken on several occasions on the issue of Site C, and I appreciate that the council is here to listen to the comments and concerns of all the citizens of Solvang. As neighbors to the newly proposed development on Lot C, which is unfortunately being considered under builder's remedy, we continue to have many concerns. So I begin with the issues most concerning. The first relates to the drainage and runoff of water from the large amount of hardscape on this property. Original plans called for a catch basin on parcel A, which now shows a fully developed property of 44 units. We're concerned that the current plan to have runoff into the city drains will require much more drainage than currently shown. Also, with these current plans, the entire property, including the easement, will be overburdened with traffic, trash pickup, emergency vehicles as necessary for 100 units. This proposal calls for 2 additional driveways off Hillside Drive at Old Mission. And as everyone who lives and drives in this area is aware, this is already a difficult and crowded area to navigate with the current traffic on Old Mission from new housing, the shopping center, delivery trucks that also use this corner. We also believe that it's important to consider that over 200 extra cars may be added to this Wildwood community, as most households will realistically have 2 cars per family. Little, if any, consideration is also given to our current wildlife population in the Mission Oaks and surrounding areas. Those of us that live in Mission Oaks believe we share this property with our deer and other wildlife population, and we feel that open spaces, less lighting, and protection of vegetation are critical to their existence. We encourage you to review this proposal carefully and to truly consider the future of Solvang for our children and our current residents. It's a major entryway for Solvang Village, and it should be an inviting and pleasant entry to welcome visitors to the Santa Ynez Valley. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Paul Matthews.
Good evening, Mayor Infante, Honorary Mayor Henderson, but she left. Council members, my name is Paul Matthews. My family and I have lived in this valley for 49 years now. Tonight, I would like to address the potential adverse traffic and parking impact of the Site C development that will clog the intersections of Old Mission Drive and Hillside Drive, and also Old Mission Drive and Alamo Pintado. Before retirement, I belonged to a statewide traffic law enforcement agency for over 35 years, so I feel comfortable addressing traffic congestion issues. The first issue I'd like to address is the traffic impact section contained in the developer's project description for the proposed housing development on Site C. It involves 100 residential units and 150 parking spaces. Contained in the developer's description, it states, quote, "The traffic study utilized data collected in the 2022 year as part of the recently approved Sansum Medical Clinic project, less than 0.2 miles from the project site. The traffic analysis concluded that the project's traffic addition would not exceed the traffic of the city's intersection LOS policies. It appears the report was mixing apples and oranges, since the traffic impact on the medical clinic would possibly involve 1 or 2 vehicles an hour, but the proposed 100-unit apartment complex with only 150 parking spaces would generate exponentially more traffic, especially if most residents have more than 1 vehicle. The second issue I want to address would be a concern for the public's health and safety. We already have high-density traffic coming from and entering Old Mission Drive and Alamo Pintado. Constant U-turns in front of Mission Oaks entrance from people and delivery trucks going to New Frontiers. natural marketplace, and a particular concern is the dead end and ingress and egress to the 100 residential units that could likely prevent the fire department's large equipment and other emergency equipment to fully gain access to all parts of the project, and not being able to get out after they're done. An evacuation would be nearly impossible in that situation. I sincerely hope the council will take these issues seriously when discussing this project, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Dan Martin. Dan Martin. And then Dan Willick on deck.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Infante, City Council members. I am Dan Martin. I'm a lifelong resident of the San Ynez Valley, and I wanted to speak about the Builder's Remedy development for Site C. Excuse me, for Site C. It's a plot of land located on Alamo Pintado Road and Old Mission Drive in Solvang. The revised application for this development was filed with the city on April 2nd of this year and has been scaled down from 109 units all the way down to 100 units and includes 150 parking spaces for inhabitants. This means that at least 150 more vehicles will be added to using the intersection of Alamo Pintado Road and Mission Drive. Anyone who uses these two roads already knows what a mess this intersection can be, and with drivers using this intersection for shopping at Nilsson's not the market, but Nilsson's Shopping Center and the Marketplace Shopping Center, and now to add 150 more vehicles to this, it would be crazy and unsafe. Unsafe because Alamo Pintado Road is also used by emergency vehicles going to the hospital and from the hospital to transport emergency cases to hospitals in Santa Barbara. I live nearby. I hear the sirens all the time. So it's quite often that the emergency vehicles are using that road. In looking at the updated application for Wildwood, the name of this development, you see only one entrance and exit for this development, and looking at the rendering for Wildwood, I didn't see how the northernmost units on this property could be reached by the fire department vehicles in case there was a fire emergency. This Builder's Remedy development not only shows safety issues, but the development is not Solvang. It doesn't fit the small town look and feeling we have here in Solvang, and something that attracts visitors here. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Willick?
Thank you and good evening. My name is Dan Willick. I'm a resident of Solvang. I'm a practicing attorney with a specialty in healthcare law and a member of the voluntary clinical faculty at USC Keck School of Medicine and UCLA Geffen School of Medicine. So I have an interest particularly in the Site C development insofar as it's my opinion that development presents a significant danger to the health and safety of this community. That danger flows from what other speakers have addressed earlier. The traffic burden is going to create significant harm, in my opinion. The present version of the development, by my calculation, has 192 bedrooms, which I think conservatively will lead to 300 to 400 residents living in the development when it is fully occupied. That will result in increased traffic burden and will negatively impact the health and safety of the community in two significant ways. First, it will delay emergency vehicles carrying acutely ill or severely injured patients to and from the emergency department at San Ynez Valley Cottage Hospital. And secondly, it will create unacceptable delay for fire department and ambulance response times to the communities which are impacted by the proposed development. Those communities include Mission Oaks, Creekside, and Sunrise Village subdivisions. I reside in Sunrise Village. And I think, even more importantly, there will be a negative impact on the hospital that would be a dangerous impact. All of these areas are rated as having severe fire danger according to publicly available real estate websites such as Redfin. And I am mystified as to why the developer turns a blind eye to the health and safety problems which the development in its present form poses to the surrounding community, particularly to the hospital and its patients. I urge the city to oppose the development in its present form, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Next is Al Cortez.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem and council members. I'm Al Cortese. I'm a Solvang resident for over 10 years. Tonight, I'd like to speak to the formal Site C development application that was filed last week. In many ways, the revised plan is worse than the original. It now consumes the entire site, covering most of it with hard surfaces, likely to magnify flooding risks. As you've heard, it's an emergency access disaster. And with dead-end access to 100 units with, as Mr. Willick has pointed out, many more bedrooms, it feeds into the Hillside Drive, which is the Mission Oaks South entry-exit road, at 2 points now. One, feeding the 44 units that are massed at the corner of Old Mission and Alamo Pintado, and a second, about 80 feet north of the first, that feeds the other 66 units over and about a 30-foot wide driveway, now with parking, over an easement on Mission Oaks common property. High-density traffic pouring in and out of those points, as has been pointed out, will impede emergency access to hospital, fire, police, and emergency stations. I would also like to remark that I see that the second reading of the resolution approving the rezoning of sites B and D is on the consent agenda tonight. With passage of that resolution, the city's housing element should soon be formally certified, and builder's remedy will no longer present a threat to rational local city planning. As to Site C, it is our position that the development proposal is void according to the California Code. And therefore, the city, by following the law, can take back control of development in Solvang. I conclude with a very personal plea. Please do not allow the destruction of what might be the last windswept valley oak. That lone oak, battling the elements at the top of the knoll at the north end of Site C, can be seen for a long distance in both directions along Alamo Pintado. Please do not allow the disappearance of that windswept oak to mark the destruction of local control over the appearance and character of Solvang. Thank you.
Thank you. Good timing. Steve Martin.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name's Stephen Martin, and I live in Mission Oaks. I've been here about 5 years. I wanted to address the issue of flooding and drainage specifically. It's been talked about a little bit before, but the new plan I've reviewed at the planning office proposes a lot line adjustment which I think the city, in its wisdom, had felt was a positive step in our initial housing element. And it's building on the flatter land, which I think everybody felt was a better idea than building on the steep property. However, unfortunately, the developer has ignored or has not accepted the wisdom of the planners in the city about leaving the hilly, steep property undeveloped, but it's gone ahead and put almost 60 units on the steepest part of these lots. As a result of that, we've got very large gradients that are going to cause water to flow down at a fairly high rate from the building B and building C to the lots below. Those waters are going to come off of the buildings that are constructed. There has been nothing in the plan shown to date how that water will be diverted either to the, I guess they're called injection or infusion basins that he has suggested for the parking lot areas. That water will come down and will hit a retaining wall. Retaining walls don't stop water. Water either goes through them or over them, possibly even under them. So they'll go down the hill at a fairly rapid rate. All of the exterior part of this development will drain down hills. And not only will they go onto the parking areas, but they will go into Alamo Pintado, because a large part of this development is located on a steep incline down to Alamo Pintado. And if a drainage off of those buildings will go on down to the Alamo Pintado Road and possibly cause water on the road, which can be a safety hazard for people driving. As you know, in the last rain we had, one of the telephone poles was severely eroded by that hill by Alamo Pintado, and it almost fell over. And it was a brace for other poles. So, clearly even without any development, that property is subject to very large amounts of flow. Lastly, the road does not show any means of diverting the existing drainage from the road, the driveway, into city sewer or storm drain systems. According to the developer, when asked, he thought that drainage, which is a torrent during the rainfall, you've seen the ditch, would go down the road, but there's no off conveyance of that water. And that's going to be, again, a serious problem if it flows onto the roads. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from Denise Alamine.
Hello, my name is Denise Alamine. I am a resident of Skid Mesa. I have been in Solvang for many, many years, back when I was young. I just want to say I brought my 11-year-old to the meeting 2 weeks ago, and she was so fascinated. She watches me on YouTube every single day. She is evaluating her grandma and telling me what to say and not to say. So I just want to give a shout out to my granddaughter who's watching me now. The other thing is that this is an election year in November. If what you have before you is not doing and making decisions that are affecting your area, then we have the right to vote 3 of them out. And that's the best way to do it in order coming here and begging them to do the right thing. All you have to do is vote them out. So if you vote 3 out and 3 in, then you'll get a majority, and then you can get something that you want to have done in your neighborhood done. So that's what you should be looking for, someone who has your best interests in your area to run for office, city council, mayor, and they will have your best interests at hand. I live in District 1, which is Skid Mesa. I come here every 2 weeks trying to get Skid Mesa on the agenda for our LLMD, and I have been unsuccessful for almost 2 years now. So come November, we will have a District 1 representative, and hopefully that person will have our best interests and will put us on the agenda. My second thing is that this city collaborates with a lot of unincorporated cities. That would be Santa Ynez and Los Olivos. One thing, I don't know if everybody knows here, but it is public knowledge. All you have to do is pull up public records. We pay over $2 million a year for a lawsuit for water that we went into an agreement, we lost, we appealed. $2 million of Solvang's money goes to ID1, which is Improvement District 1. Last 2 weeks, our attorney sat here and says that he wants to make an agreement with ID1 again to do under the water under the ground. I cannot believe that we're going to pay them $2 million a year and then we're going to get into another contract with them. Please, I am just putting my property tax money in the mail tomorrow, and I do not appreciate it being wasted.
Thank you. Do we have anybody on Zoom that wants to say anything? Okay, don't see any. We appreciate the public insight and the information. Unfortunately, we do not open it up for dialogue for purposes of time and fairness. So we'll move on the agenda, the next items. City manager report and advanced calendar, please.
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of things I wanted to point out. The last speaker said nothing has been on the agenda, and there are two. If you look at the advanced calendar, the next two meetings, there will be issues related to the lighting landscape district on the agenda. So just wanted to inform her of that. A couple of other announcements I wanted to make. Over here on the table, there's a letter that will be going out in your water bills at the end of the month, but you can get an advance copy. This is a petition to participate in a survey that will help us during the budget process identify to focus on some priorities. So you have an opportunity to participate in that survey. The letter going out has a QR code and it's on the city's website under civic alerts as well. So I want to share that. Also, on April 25th, so 2 weeks from Thursday, there will be a meeting here in Chamber to discuss the Santa Ynez Valley Trail. We have an item on consent tonight as well about that, but there'll be a public meeting here beginning at 6 p.m. on April 25th that will be also broadcast on Zoom. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Any questions for the mayor, for city manager? Getting off easy. Okay. Next is the, any council comments or requests for section AB 1, 2, 3, 4 items?
I have none because I'm sure you have one because I missed a meeting that you stepped in for me.
No worries. Okay. Moving along. Okay.
Do you want to report out on the GSA participation?
If you have a
Well,
report.
I wasn't able to make it, so if you
Oh.
think that was the purpose of that item on the agenda.
Yeah, what she's referring to is the meeting of 2 weeks ago for the JPA.
Sorry. It's my committee responsibility, but you're my alternate, and I really appreciate that you sat in for me. It was the EMA GSA meeting last Thursday, or 28th, I think,
28th.
of March.
Basically, we had a consultant report that was approved and went forward. That was the only voting item of the evening, but they're continuing their dialogue with the other parties as it relates to an agricultural representation on the board, and they're still working that out. We advised them of the guardrails that we would like to see from our previous meeting, and they were moving forward with that. That's all I had for that particular meeting. Oh, Mark, do you have any comments or concerns?
No, nothing more at this time. I was waiting to hear from Dave Fleischman to see what he came up with, but no, I've got nothing on that for right now.
Maybe the score of the NC2A game?
No, 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 don't share.
Did you tape it?
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on here is consent items. Is there, consent is for routine administrative city matters and is approved with one motion. These items are discussed only on request of council members. Members of the public were afforded an opportunity to speak during the public communications portion of this agenda. Does anybody have any concerns about the consent items?
No.
I'd like to pull one item, if we could.
Which item is that?
Item 4K, just for some points of clarification.
Okay.
Do you want to approve
Is there,
a motion to approve consent items 4A through J?
You're asking?
I'm making a motion.
I'll second it.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to pull item K on the consent. Is there any other discussion?
Some
I think the motion actually was to adopt or approve the consent items A through J, which by default means we haven't approved K, but I just want to be clear that we are in fact making the motion to adopt the remainder of the items.
Do we need to vote, Chelsea, on?
On the consent items? Yes, please do a roll call vote on that motion.
Any others? Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clark?
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona?
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Rona?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Mayor Infante?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
So now we can have the discussion on item K.
Okay, well, is there a time issue for this, or?
I had some points of clarification just to make sure we all understood what we were about to approve. And maybe it's some wording or the scope of the definition of the grant that we would approve a quarter of the grant funding to apply for what they're calling the ATP program, Active Transportation Program, which I understood after doing some research and talking to some of the other leads of the Chumash, the county, and Buellton, who are also participating, that this grant funding, I just want to be sure I'm clear on what it is meant to solve. It is, because there's language in here that actually describes the river trail and the actual location of the river trail, but it is my understanding this is really meant to create an assessment of multimodal connection between the endpoints of the existing trail and for us to determine what is the feasible pathing in the city of Solvang to connect schools, parks, and the two endpoints. Is that correct?
Yes, we actually had a Zoom call today with the parties. Supervisor Hartman made it very clear that the trails, as being proposed initially by the engineer that's doing this grant proposal, needs to be flexible, and there was discussion about going alternate routes, possibly up through HCA Park and whatever, and to avoid the Fjord Road area. So that obviously will be part of the discussion in 2 weeks as part of that community meeting. But the route has not been identified clearly through the city of Solvang yet.
Okay, and in total, this will be roughly $80,000 to $82,000 in expenditure to apply for the grant, which sounds like a large expenditure for consulting help. So the grant scope is very big, but what is the window of time and what is the scope for the grant that when do we have to have the grant application in? Do we have enough runway? And what is the scope of the application?
The grant application is due, I believe, in June. And there is some concern. It's a 2-year cycle, so it will not be available again for 2 years. One of the primary urgency concern is that our partnering with the tribe gives us additional points consideration regarding disadvantaged communities. And there's a high likelihood that the rules, because of the income of the casino and other things related to the tribe, the next time the cycle is available, they will no longer be considered a disadvantaged community.
Okay, you've got my questions answered. Thank you, Randy.
Any other questions?
I had asked the city manager earlier this week if 6C were related to one of that item on the consent agenda, right? Would you explain that again?
For which one?
I had asked you about was there any connection between 6C and the discussion items versus the grants? Where was that? I have to look, and you can answer it later. I have to look at my notes. I don't remember right now.
I know we talked about it, but honestly, I don't remember. 6C is the transportation funding, so I don't know that was it.
Okay.
Have to look at the agenda, sorry.
Were you going to say something, Roger?
If you have something to add, Roger, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, J. Item J on the consent agenda.
Yes. So the TDA claim is an annual claim that we make for the TDA monies for transit.
Okay.
The item 6C is our operations contract with RATP Dev, which is the company that operates the transit. So while they're related, they're both transit related, and they both have money attached to them. The consent item for the TDA claim is an essential process that we need to do in order to file the claim with. We send it to Caltrans, and they send us, or actually I think it's SBCAG, and they send us money back.
All right.
So there's another one coming up in the next council agenda too. It's I think LTF funding, but. Okay.
Thank you, Roger.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Anything else, Robert? Okay, going back to,
So I'll make a motion to approve consent item 4K.
I'll second it.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
yes.
Mark Infante, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're off to item 6A on our agenda. Discussion and possible direction of staff regarding implementation of city goals.
Yeah, so a couple of weeks ago on Saturday, March 9th, we held a workshop over at Cork House and came up with a list of 33 goals. They are included, and my computer went dead, so I'll have to turn it back on, sorry. And they were prioritized based on council's input, and it is summarized on the worksheet that is included as part of this. Sorry, I'm distracted trying to do 3 things at once. As part of this agenda. And so this item tonight is to discuss the report and the result of that meeting, and have Rod Wood here to help us go through the process. He can explain in better detail and what the opportunity is here and identify the process that we need to move forward with. So, Rod, you want to step up to the microphone, please?
Mayor, council members, as you recall, about a month ago, you did have a workshop. It was an open public workshop. The definition of workshop is that you're considering factors, but you're not deliberating on those factors. Tonight is the night that you would actually be discussing and deliberating and potentially making those decisions. We had gone through the effort of trying to collect all of the goals that have been around for in some cases, many, many years, that have been on the prior budgets and prior actions of the council, as well as any new ones. We've talked to not only the council members, but to some of the commissioners and the community was at the meeting. This also reflects issues that the staff is aware of from over the years. And again, there's 33 listed here. There were a lot more than that, but many of them were fairly close and similar, so we consolidated. Your task last month was to prioritize them so that we could know where to spend our time looking at the cost and the resources that would be needed for those goals. The outcome of that is, the good news is that you have enough staff resources over the 2 years to complete the 15 top priority goals, perhaps some others as well, on the list. So considering availability of staff is not a substantial concern in terms of your assessment of which goals you want to go forward with. The real issue is the dollars necessary for some of the outside resources, consultants. Some of these projects would require some fairly sophisticated software, which most cities don't have and can't afford, so you'd have to hire a consulting group to provide for that. On one item, I want to make a note on item 7, which is some of the road work. The goal does not include the actual construction of any road work. That's just kind of giving you a thought of the potential cost you're looking at based on the decisions you make. That goal is really focused on looking at what all of our options are, which ones the council feels make sense, and then which ones we might be able to convince Caltrans to support in that process. Once that decision's made, then you can start looking at an actual capital improvement project that you would consider at that time. The cost, when you net that out, is somewhere between 1.2 million, 1.4 million to do all of this work. So I think the real issue is how much funding do you feel you can set aside to make progress on these issues. Once you establish what you think you want to use for funding, whether that's $100,000 or $1 million or whatever it is, then I think you can start prioritizing the goals you have in front of you based on that budget, because some will be more expensive, some won't. If you eliminate a couple and get the cost down, there may be some that are not in the top 15 that might be able to move up the list as well. So tonight, I think my advice to you would be to take a look at the dollars you think you have available and feel you can comfortably commit, then start assigning those dollars to the goals as you see them. They are listed in the rank in which they were rated. The process, as you recall, was each individual council member put a rating on which goals they thought were the best. We had a scoring system and added those up, and these are listed in the rank order in which those were voted on. You, of course, have a lot more information about each of those goals now, as well as the resources needed. One side note from some of your discussion, which spills over into a number of these issues. When the state of California looks at all of the laws, rules, regulations, and procedures that they impose on municipal agencies, they do not take into consideration how big you are. So the standards that are applied to cities like Oakland are exactly the same that are ascribed to you as a small community. So if they mandate a position, like you have to have a city clerk, that's the law. If they prescribe a position, it doesn't matter how much of an impact that is on you as a city, you have to do it. It's prescribed by law. So there's a lot of things that are occurring in your community that are ordained by law. Like I say, you have to have a city clerk, you have to have a city treasurer, you have to have a licensed engineer sign plans, you have to have a building function, you have to have a planning function, you have to have a finance function. There's a whole series of things you have to have, whether you provide any services to the community or not, because those positions file reports with the state of California, and that's what they're motivated to make sure is occurring. It's not any kind of untoward intent. They're trying to make sure that things are reported. You may remember a few years ago, there were some cities that almost went bankrupt because of their investment policies. So now you have to provide that information to the state. So it's not a bad thing inherently, but it's a real major impact on small communities. Very big. And so some of these issues have some responsibility under state law that you'd be doing. There's some others that we showed that were internal issues, like risk management issues that you have to perform, training activities that you're required by law to perform in that process. And I raise that because we do mention that there is a management analyst position that we're counting on being retained. You've already approved that. We're going to be attempting to recruit that position. We've looked at providing up to half of that person's time to accomplish these goals so that at the end of the 2 years, you actually have these done. This isn't a wish list. This is, if you say you want it done, we've committed to it. At the end of that 2 years, this will be done. And you'll have that information to make decisions in the future. The other half of that position, or more, will be dedicated to doing things that you're currently not doing because of staffing at levels that are required by law to do. Some of those involve your emergency management program. Like I said, some of it involves your risk management program and some of your HR activities. So with that, I would suggest you talk amongst yourselves about what you think your budget would accommodate related towards these goals, and then we can talk about the individual goals.
Any other follow-up, Randy?
Not at this time. Obviously, we can answer questions. We're getting into the budget process now. If your direction will be to accommodate as much of this as we can. One of the items, I think the next item is creating an ad hoc budget committee. So that'll help us assess. We're going to convene one of the items on consent was to convene the Measure U committee here in a couple of weeks, and we can utilize that. We have that funding available. So again, we're looking for some direction, and Rod's here to help answer questions that I might not be able to.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure, you're now bound by the decisions you make tonight. This is the second step in a three-step process. The next step is, once you give us this additional direction of your comfort level and priorities, then you'll make your final decisions during the budget process, because these will actually be embedded in the budget.
Right. Thank you. Okay, let's take it to public comments. Do we have anyone local? Mr. Goldstein? Is this right agenda item? 6A, is what it says. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor Infante and members of the council, my name is David Goldstein. I am a board member with the Friends of the Library from SYV, San Ynez Valley. And I am here to lobby for the library, the Solvang Library, your library, as far as the listings go that you're considering, the importance of the library in a community like Solvang. I can't say how important it is for the community. A great city, which I think we'll all agree Solvang is, deserves a great library. And the library as it exists today is the same library that has served this community since, I'm going to say 1980s. And we've had reports done and studies done that indicate that the services that are required for our community require about 3 times the space that we have now, which is a 2,000 square foot room over in the county building. I think you all know where it is. And we need more space and, of course, more staff once we're done with that to service the people of the community and the area around Solvang that the library serves. So I am asking you to please reconsider the position on your list, on your priorities of the library, and reposition it to where it belongs, which is, up toward the top of the list. I'm not saying it should be number one, but it should be very well considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Carrie McKinnon.
Good evening. Hello, Mayor, council members, city staff. I am here, I do work in your library, but I am not here to represent the library administration. I'm here because I'm a city resident and a library lover. And I want to thank you for including the library in your list of priorities. I think David expressed very well how important improving our library is for the community. You may not know that the Friends of the Library had 2 studies done. One was by Ray Holt in 2001, and the other one by library consultant Linda Demers in 2009. And there's a ton of information in there. I'm hoping that they actually are in your city files, but if not, I'm sure copies can be got to you. And they showed that our library was, yes, incredibly tiny for the demand that's put on it. So I just want to encourage you to think about the community and the community's library needs. I also wanted to point out that there's something on this list, I think it's number 22. It talks about looking into meeting space available in the community. Our library has no meeting space that people could borrow or rent out, and we are constantly getting questions about it. So that's a need that a new library could cover. Just putting that out there. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Next is Denise Alamine.
Hi, I'm Denise Elamine, and I'm here to talk about all of the money that we spend on our studies. We can't do anything without a study around here. And after the money is spent on these expensive studies, we never get anything done. I still have potholes. We still have cracks. We have everything. And I don't know why we put so much emphasis on hiring people and doing these big studies when the community members never see it trickle down to the little people. And I am with Carrie. The library is very important. I have an 11-year-old granddaughter who will be coming to the Valley, and she loves the library. And I don't think it needs an extended $1.4 million person to come and tell us that we need one. Why can't we just start building one? I really, really, really do not like how you guys spend my money. This is money that comes out of my pocket that I could be traveling with, but I'm giving it to the city council, and I'm entrusting my money with you guys. And I would appreciate if I would see something in my neighborhood or something that I could use, pickleballs, courts, or a larger library. I've been here and I've never seen it grow. And Carrie's right. When we want to have meetings, there is no space in the library to have a meeting. When I need to have a meeting, I have to go over to Buellton. They do have a couple tables in the back. And I pay taxes here, so it should be afforded that I can come here and have a meeting in the library, or be able to bring my granddaughter, and we're able to have a great time in the library. So really consider not having so much overhead and using the majority of the money to fix the problem. Let's not talk about fixing it. Let's fix the problem. If we do that, then more community members will benefit from the changes in our tax paying money in here. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else that I don't have a slip for? Is there anyone online that wants just to comment? Okay, we'll bring it back to the, oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to make one response. That's a question related to the use of funds for doing studies, and everybody's very familiar with the endless government studies that occur and so often end up on shelves, and pretty much every community has that issue. But there is a reason why you have to do a number of these studies, because every public project you do ultimately is going to have an environmental assessment. And that environmental assessment is going to require all of this technical information that gets gathered through these studies in order to have the environmental study. If you don't do the studies and you don't do the environmental assessment, then you're not allowed to construct the project. Now, maintenance project like potholes does not require that, but any new project, like if you built a new library, that does require those efforts, and so that's why those occur. Most of what's in here in consulting fees is, again, because you couldn't afford to buy the software that's needed to do like a traffic study. So you have to hire somebody that has that software to do it. And you will have zero conversations with Caltrans if you don't have those studies. So that's, again, the reason why we've actually worked very hard to keep that to a limit. So like if you look at the assessment of library needs, we're aware of the prior studies. We think we can use most of the data in there, and it's really kind of assembling it and bringing it up to date. So we're not showing any consulting cost related to that. That would give you a baseline of making a decision about the kind of library you need or want in the future, which then lets you have a conversation about when can you fund it and getting it built.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council. If there's any questions or comments?
I have a couple questions. So first of all, appreciate that you come back to help us continue to walk through this process and all the work that you put into, Randy, the staff, into putting this together. The packet says that it's the estimate for all of the top 15 projects is between 1.2 and 1.4 million. But there are some items in here that don't have a total or costs associated with them.
If there's not a cost, we don't perceive needing a consultant.
Okay, perfect. So we can include it, we don't have to assume there's additional or growth on that 1.2 to 1.4.
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Second, is there any of these items, I thought there were one or two that was already in the CIP. So is it carry over into the next 2-year plan? I'll give you an example, the infrastructure maintenance plan, right? That's ongoing capital expense. Is that
I would ask
additional dollars, or how do we think about that?
The specific item number is?
I just threw one example out. It's a general question,
Oh,
but
general.
an example would be the infrastructure maintenance would always be in our capital improvement plan. So is there anything else that's?
The difference would be is looking at all the various infrastructure needs that you have, which may not be in your current infrastructure plan, and what are those infrastructure needs. I would have to defer to the department head to be specific about what was intended with that goal. I do know that they were looking at trying to make sure we've got all of the assessment in place of that infrastructure, whether it's storm drains or sewer lines or sidewalks or whatever the infrastructure is.
So I'm going to infer from that, every cost is incremental and not overlapping. Is that right?
That's what we anticipate with this.
Okay, so I understand that. There's no duplicity, basically, is what we're saying.
That's what I'm asking you.
There's item 15 and 16, which I'd suggested consolidating because those are really overlapping, and if you're going to do one, you might as well do the other at the same time. So, and again, depending on how things work out with the available staff time and the timing of that staff, then we may actually, again, be able to get more than the 15 done. And again, for the community, what that means is all of these different things will then have the opportunity to start looking for funding sources in the process, whether it's grants or special funding programs that occur, or whether it's a special release by a department, because in the state and federal government, sometimes they release funds that didn't get spent, like the infrastructure program. They'll have money left over, and all of a sudden there'll be these special grants. But you have to have this information in place to approach them with those requests, as well as whatever your capital improvement budget might be.
So if I understand this properly, these are estimates for getting these projects up and started, but there's no revenue source for this. So the revenue would become either from our own capital or grants.
Well, part of the assessment would be, what does the staff and any consultants that we're using see as the potential funding sources that could make these projects possible? There's all, libraries especially, there's periodically all kinds of grants that become available for libraries. So we would identify, there's the library fund. You may be able to do an arrangement with the broader community that you actually have library services with, to get them to participate. So we would try to identify what all those funding potentials are as part of that analysis, so that you're not just, well, what do we do now? If you want to go forward with the project, whatever that might be, we want to give you the blueprint that says, okay, from this point, here's where we go to get the thing constructed.
Thank you.
Could we maybe go, I don't know, it might be tedious, but I wonder if it would be helpful to go by one by one, discuss it and see if we want to move forward with it. Because, some of these are no-brainers. We can tackle them. We have it's a matter of coordinating something. We have the staff for it. We can go ahead and do it. Some of these, they might require getting more funding, or it might require a certain opportunity, maybe talking to other agencies or other parties that could collaborate. One that comes to mind is the one about the wastewater treatment plant serving other areas. If there's no interest on other parties to get involved with it, well, then it's not really worth it to look into it and invest into it. But we're not really going to know until we start kind of putting feelers out there. So, just for the sake of tackling this, do you guys want to do that? Go through each one and see how we feel about it, so that we can come up with a concise list to give to Randy to say, go make it happen?
I understand what you're saying, but just because something doesn't have a cost associated with it, shouldn't move it up as a priority if it's still second or third. Is that, I don't know. As far as the staff time and whatnot.
Let's pick an example. Number one, parking. That's an issue in the community. It's an issue with the city. If you move forward with that, we would try to make it a bit more of an iterative process, in the sense that as we progressed, if we found major hurdles we couldn't get past, we'd bring that to you then. You'll be involved in these studies as we proceed, so that hey, we can't get, or if we say, wow, we discovered something, there's this huge pool of money, we would bring that to you then, and then you'd be able to start additional components of that process. In terms of each of them, I mean, whatever the council desires to do, I'm happy to do, in terms of going through each of them. Your decision.
I'm up for going through them pretty quick, though.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be long.
Okay.
Okay.
Robert?
A quick question, if I may. If we just said we wanted to stick with the top 15 for right now, until we had a better identification of how we were going to do all of this, is that what we're looking for this evening?
Preferably, we'd get one step past that, which is, I have an ability to support, say, $500,000 towards this effort over the next 2 years. This is not a one-year budget, it's a 2-year budget. Is a different outcome for looking at these goals than if you said, look, these things have been sitting around a long time, we want to get them done, we'll go ahead and bite the bullet and do the 1.2 and try to get them all done. Again, I do believe, I have a pretty high confidence level, unless something comes up unforeseen, which typically does, that you'll actually be able to go below the 15, because some of those don't require that financial commitment in the process. And by unforeseens, if you do nothing as a city, if you just sit here and twiddle your thumbs, every single year the state of California will pass approximately 300 pieces of legislation that will affect how you do that, along with all the court cases that occur. And as you heard from your utilities manager, all the various rules and regulations that come down from all the state and federal agencies. So you're endlessly barraged. If one of those suddenly required 1,000 staff hours of effort, That obviously will have an impact on our ability to get the goals done. We obviously will bring that back to you so that you can fit that into that process. But lacking that kind of thing, we should be able to get this all done. My direction from Randy is, we don't want to have another wish list that we wait 2 years and nothing got done. My task here is to make sure that whatever you approve gets done. And I will tell you, after 50-some years of doing this, it was my experience always, money's never the problem. Getting to yes is the problem. Getting the actual project you want, getting a commitment to it, making those things. And I would just pick the first one. I know one community who has 11 public parking garages. And the way that they've constructed them is that they make, in addition to the parking cost, they make $26 million a year in revenue.
On parking?
From the parking structures. Because what they did, you couldn't afford it here because you're not there financially, but I mean in terms of the economic market. But they put all the parking underground and 3 floors above ground that were commercial. So there's some different ways that you can look at doing these things, and that's part of the study is what are our options? What are our ability to make this happen if we want to make it happen? The biggest challenge you have is the highway, because you have a partner out there that Caltrans can be recalcitrant.
Okay.
Definitely. Okay, and then, yeah, you said this sounds like a nice money pit, but.
Yeah.
So the first one is the parking. That's the first one on your priority list. And again, it's to look at what you've got there. We can look at, is there a better way to lay it out, or we have the right kind of access? But also, what do we do? Can we expand it? Should we be looking down the road at some kind of a structure? What is that? What does that cost? What do we see as those options? We believe there are several studies on parking in place, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel on all of this in that process. So whatever we find, which, by the way, could affect the consulting costs as well, if we find some very in-depth studies that are already in place that merely need some updating, then that will save time and money.
Okay. Well, we have gone over these once before.
We did. We should be almost just able to either eliminate or revalidate their prioritization, right?
Okay.
We can do that too.
Yeah.
All right. So
Let's have feedback from
Yeah.
the council here as to their pleasure.
And I think the members of the public know that library issue is in that top 15.
It is in the top 15.
It is, and,
Yep.
okay.
And these are objectives that we're trying to achieve. There's no motion tonight for this. This is purely for.
For direction, yeah, and as I indicated, if there's at least a willingness for the council to consider the entire $1.2 million, we can bring this part of the budget ad hoc process and identify the most important things. And to the extent there is not funding available or there is less of an appetite, once we look at the actual budget and determine what our needs are there, then that decision can be made through the budget process.
Got it.
All right. My question on number 3, didn't we do a lot of these on the, revising the general plan? We went and looked through how we can allow for the housing that is imposed upon us. Unless we were to look at partnerships with developers or other organizations that want to invest on affordable housing, I don't see how spending nearly $100,000 on it on top of the revising the general plan would get us.
Okay.
So, and just to understand, these numbers, it was based on our estimates.
Right.
It could be less, it could be more. Raphael on this one in particular was the brains behind. It's an estimate of what he anticipated we would need to do. As was mentioned, we did. This is something we intend to work toward, and we'll be able to utilize the staffing, knowledge and expertise as much as possible. And it is something we intend to do, but it would be good that it was consistent with a council goal.
I see value here just because this is how we achieve infill housing. right, low cost or affordable housing or incremental housing for residential use in the city boundary, because one of the exercises here is to create objective design standards, right? This is like templates for how you go about this at the lowest cost possible. And because we give those objective design standards, we're creating a quick, easy template model to follow, low cost hopefully, and we could get results from that kind of an approach.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, I thought that we were working on this already.
Yeah, the housing element that you've adopted actually has some criteria in it that you then have to follow up on, whether it's with ordinances or criteria that gets into it. Secondly, with this particular one, I think the hope is that when this is done, we actually can identify some projects that you can proceed forward with. We've identified specific properties, specific solutions, but some of this is actually implementing. You have the general plan, and the classic example is from the general plan, you adopt zoning.
Create policy for it.
And so
okay.
with this, you now have to create those policies to carry out that, because the state will be visiting us again with saying, okay, what did you do?
And we might ask Raphael to come up here and maybe address those more specifically.
I'm not sure how much detail we want to get into for each of these.
I can get in pretty quick.
Okay.
Just to answer your question. So this item in particular is based on our general plan, what's coming of the pipeline. So the general plan sets the stage to move forward. But as mentioned in my last update from your last general plan, you essentially adopted a document that just sat there on the shelf. No one did anything. This now basically sets everything up. So the work hours are here estimated based on a consultant's time or mine time. Pick which one. If you want city staff to sit here and do all this, I most certainly can. I'm very capable. But that means my attention then goes specifically to something else, which means something else becomes lacking. And that includes the day-to-day operations of my overall department, whether it's building, code compliance, et cetera. So something has to give unless you want to just die working, which I don't think my kids would be okay with.
Let's not do that.
So at least for the planning end, it's based on the assumption that it's a mix of both city staff time. So a great example is create opportunity handouts for potential redevelopment. That's actually my time based on your knowledge that has come up in speaking with the council and Randy and developers, and then we as city staff create that. But other things like, creating objective design standards, that is a very heavy lift from just a one-person standpoint. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's go down the list then real quick.
Okay, 4, that's back on the list, I think, and it's been on the list because I think there are some regional agencies out there in the region that have interest. I can think of at least one that is going to be confronting dramatically expensive outcomes unless they can maybe work an arrangement with us.
I think, though, Councilmember Arona is bringing up a good point, is we shouldn't do a study unless we have some form of commitment, right? If the other CSDs or cities are not interested in leveraging our wastewater treatment plant,
Yeah,
it
we
doesn't
would
make
bring
sense to
back.
go after the study.
Let's say you approve this. We would bring back to you a fairly detailed, here's what's involved in this effort.
Okay.
And here are the touch points we'll be coming back to you, the council. Like, we've reached out to all the various communities and X, Y, and Z are willing, but the others are not. That means this, so that we would only then study X, Y, and Z. So there will be touch points where we come back to you. It's not going to be, you'll see us when we're done.
Okay.
On that issue specifically, I was on a Zoom call earlier today with Los Olivos CSD, and he is taking the proposal that was given to him by Carollo, because this council authorized investigating that recently. And so I reached out to Carollo, and they provided a proposal to them, and he is taking that proposal to his board Wednesday, I think, this week. So
So
we're
that's ongoing.
this is one we're working on based on previous direction.
Okay.
Item 5, that's the all-in. If we do it all now, we easily can come back and you can consider and say, well, why don't we do 3 code sections and get those up to date and do the others at another time? And then the staff can look at what we would prioritize in that. So again, we would be bringing that back to you. Even if you approve it in the budget as it is, more or less, we'll be coming back to you and saying, here's where we are, here's what we think, and here's some options. So you could say, well, let's just do this, and maybe that cost is cut in half or more in that effort. Or during the budget process, you could say, we don't want to fund the $184,000 in these costs, and we're anticipating you wouldn't. We'd like to do these 3 that are 15 or 18,000. So
Mr. Mayor, aren't items 5 and 10 pretty much connected? 5 and 10? Yes.
Yes.
One would serve the other.
They're related, but the streamlining of your code permitting process it's a procedural thing, a little bit differently. What's permitted, what requires discretionary actions, but yes, they're definitely related.
I'm making my question. Are we going to be making decisions on every single one of these tonight?
We're going to go through each one,
Jeez.
at least the top 15.
Are they still in or are they out?
And then are we going to change the priority, or are we going to leave them on or not? That's kind of what I'd like to find out, and that's what the direction they're looking for.
Yeah,
So
I'm good.
would that be a
with
fair
5.
statement?
I'm good with 5, as long as we streamline that down to, the top 3, and if we are conscious of the 85,000 that we've got earmarked for number 5, and blend it with
Yeah, our numbers assume that that's
10.
what you would do.
Yeah, okay.
And I think for staff, if we could make progress on anything, we'd be happy.
It could be a long night.
Yeah.
6?
6, I am struggling with the definition of 6 and what we're really intending to achieve there.
Well, we had talked about, I don't know, maybe relying a little more on code enforcement, downtown ambassadors to help out when law enforcement is not necessary, or do we want to hire extra security to fill in the gaps where, our law enforcement is not available, or do we want to look at a different place? Do we want to look at other alternatives, considering how much we're paying for it every year? It might be worth looking into.
You have one sheriff's deputy 24/7, and they're the commander that oversees them. This would be an effort to look at, well, what are your options? Yes, you could hire another deputy, and you know what the cost of that is. You could retire private security. I know some very, very affluent communities who have hired private security, not because they couldn't afford the police, but because they can't hire them. There's not enough applicants in the pool to fill the positions. I know this sheriff's department is also struggling with that, as is just about every law enforcement agency in the country. You also can look at different kinds of programs, as you say. What can code enforcement take on? You can have non-sworn people doing all of your parking issues that you may have. How effective is your neighborhood watch program? And if you have an effective neighborhood watch program, it's very good about heading off crime.
I just want to be very specific what problem we're solving here. It's not that we can't change how much we spend under our sheriff's contract anymore. It is what it is. But where specifically do we have a safety issue where we would need?
The issue that I've
Supplemental
heard, predominantly response times.
Yeah, and
And you either have to take
I'm
some
either
of,
missing it or I don't hear any complaints. Now, that's different than, say, traffic control or accelerating pedestrian traffic on very busy weekends. If we're trying to solve that problem, then I think we could be very surgical about what we go study here.
I can just say it came up from more than one source, and you collectively made it number 6, so. But it would include a range of ways of addressing public safety.
And I don't see a cost item for number 6, is that?
That's primarily staff time.
Staff time.
I have to say, though, that I think we're doing the public a disservice by examining every single point on 30 different items on here during a public meeting. This, to me, seems more like something we should be doing in a workshop again, as opposed to sitting here for 5 hours tonight and going over 33 different items.
Well, we're halfway
And
through it.
prioritizing, and each item has 13 different subsets. And we're going to sit here tonight and pick which ones the city of Solvang is going to choose going forward, I think is insanity.
We're halfway through the 15.
Understood.
Well, you want to proceed, or you want to do,
I'm
do you have an
along for the
alternative? I understand that.
But I just think, I don't think we're doing a, well, never mind.
Well, a workshop.
The public deserves more. Go ahead.
7, of course, is the big boogeyman. It's what do we do about traffic? And that's probably the most complicated issue on here. And the only thing you can do is actually analyze the multiple options you have of dealing with it. Having spent all day today in town, enjoying the town, very lovely. Clearly those unregulated crosswalks are a major problem with your traffic congestion. And I would guess that if you could do things that could resolve that traffic congestion, that would address probably one of the number one concerns that I'm aware of in the community, which is somehow reduce the impact of all this tourism. And that biggest impact is the traffic congestion. So this one is to look at what your options are, what you think makes sense, and then, of course, you have to go to Caltrans to find out what they would or wouldn't be willing to support. And
I mean, we've had discussions on this point really a number of times. It's probably the biggest impact item we could do for residents and tourists in combination is to improve the way people move around over the weekends in particular.
what this would give you is a game plan on how to go forward from here with solutions that the staff and the consultant will tell you, we believe we could get this through Caltrans. Then there's the whole funding issue, and that's a separate issue, and depending on where the world is at any given moment, there's either a lot of money or no money. Right at this moment, there's actually a lot of money floating around. I mean, out of the $1 trillion in the Inflation Reduction Act, almost all of it's still unspent.
I know.
Now, I don't know if that changes with the Baltimore Bridge or not.
Well, we definitely can't get through Caltrans without looking at it seriously. So I think we can't get around not doing it.
Okay.
I think so too, but we still have enough in our control, just Alisal Road, if we improved, and the intersection of Copenhagen and Alisal would be an improvement.
Yes. And how you get in and out of the parking lots, there's a whole range of things that can really affect congestion. 8 is develop more local events. Oops, 7.
Yeah, I'd like to move number 7 and replace it with 6. So 6 would drop to 7 and 7 would go to 6.
I actually think we could combine the two, because,
Potentially.
Public safety and...
the public safety is still, to me, like, we could hire a consultant or a traffic, what's the phrase, a crossing guard.
Yeah.
I'm not completely clear how 6
I don't see
and
it as
7 are
a
combined.
sheriff-related issue. I see it as, can we contract to resolve some other, default things you would think would fall to sheriff, but don't?
I agree the issues will overlap because how you manage your traffic during the day with human resources will affect congestion potentially. The 7 is actually what can you or should you do physically to the ground. So, but there are issues within 6 that are completely unrelated to 7. So.
I just wanted to change the order.
Oh, I don't care about the
Flip 'em.
order. That's your call.
I'm in, you can flip them, that sounds fine.
I mean, if you really think about it, every single one of these is interrelated in some way.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole idea of 6, in my mind, is, a lot of it is code enforcement. It's parking enforcement. It's actual codes. We can't do that until the codes are updated. The processes associated with that are streamlined. So, I mean, they're all woven together. I mean, that's what we are as a city. It's,
What are the charges that you're receiving from the sheriff's department, and do that comply with the state law that says it can't charge you more than it cost?
I don't
'Cause
know.
I've been
I
involved
would
with
love to
sheriff's
have
contract.
costs.
Yeah, I would love to have a
well,
concise
in the
answer
end-
to that
Button
question.
right now, Ron.
In the end, you can
not
get
your
that
fault.
information. In the end, you can get that information, because the Public Records Act is pervasive. Whether you get it in a form you want it in is a different question. But I have worked in a number of communities where we had contracts with sheriffs, and lo and behold, invariably, they, over years, costs creep in that really aren't supported by what the law says, and you can have those conversations. One, two, you have a number of agencies in this county that contract with the sheriff. If you got enough of them, you might have enough to put together a regional police department and bypass the sheriff. That's been done.
Hello.
So when I say there are options within public safety that go beyond, and I'm not even remotely suggesting that the sheriff hasn't given you the skinniest budget possible, I'm just saying all of that stuff should get looked at. However, I will
Put it
tell
back
you,
on
every time I've
priority.
ever looked, it's been padded.
Okay.
Number 8?
All right, 8, 9, that's, absorbing staff time. I believe that's ongoing. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my comment there would be, let's just, this is a good example of where we should not be acting alone or in a vacuum. We need community participation, chamber participation. We need partners to do an effective job on some of this, not just the marketing, but the events.
And both of these items were put forward as well by the chamber independently. So
Right. And even item 11, right, the expansion of meetings, retreats, and conferences, not necessarily benefiting only the city. It will benefit private business if we do this well. So we should have a partner participate.
Absolutely. In a community like this, where the economy is so integrated with the community, if you're not working with the chamber and tourism bureaus and those folks, including some of your neighbors, just like you do with transportation, you're really missing opportunities. The way the tax laws are in California today, if business is successful, you're successful, because most of your revenues come from business sources, sales tax, hotel tax, that kind of thing. I don't know, what percent of your budget is property tax? The average city in California is about 10 or 11%.
I was going to say not more than that, yeah.
Yeah, that's the average in California. Property tax is about 10 or 11% of the total budget. So if you don't have that business income, meaning that the sales tax and the room taxes and the business license taxes, you probably don't have a city.
Any others?
No, it takes us to, are we on 10?
We can just take it to 10 if you want, but I'd like to include I'd like to go to 15 to include the direction for the library
Yeah.
as well.
I agree.
So let's go to 11.
Okay. Evaluate market potential of expanding business meetings and retreats. You're isolated, okay? You don't have a major airport. My daughter happens to be an event planner. She does events for big corporations like Google and that kind of thing all over the world. And even small retreats, the classic, executive retreat where you're taking your management team away. This actually has potential from that, because what you want in those is to be as detached from the workplace as possible. And so coming to some place like this actually has some potential. The question is, how do you get them here, and where is that market, and how big is that market? Will they drive from LA? Will they drive from San Francisco? And there are ways of determining that tolerance level of distance to benefit. But I can tell you that within the private sector, unlike government, money isn't always the issue with them. It's, do I get what I want in terms of the experience of the staff to build better team, to get better results? And in the tech world, that goes to the extreme. I mean, Google will send 85 people to Switzerland for a week just because they did a good job.
Well, I think this is a good example of the city alone we should be helping the hotel and the convention entities plan itineraries that are going to be built around experiences, but the city alone shouldn't be doing this. Alisal is a great example. They can put together a great itinerary, and they're doing their own marketing, right? Partnering with the Visit SYB or our marketing agency. They should be owning this sort of
Agreed.
straw man plan for us, and then figuring out what is the city's, contribution to those plans.
Well, we could certainly nudge them, hey,
Yes,
you know.
we can push, we want to do this. And
Let's take your hotels in town itself, okay? Their ability to expand and provide more meeting space and stuff to accommodate this may be a bit limited. But you may have a piece of property you're able to put one together where you could put a meeting facility that could then be shared by multiple hotels. So there's lots of different things you can look at, but I couldn't agree with you more. If you're not including the players who are going to have to do the work to get the business, then you're not going to have a good plan.
it's not just the work, too, it's the caliber of the experience, right?
Absolutely.
Is it a 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star experience? And they're only, and then if it's, 4 or 5-star, they will attract
Right. Who is your market?
a market, moving impact, right? If we just have businesses driving up here from Ventura
Yeah.
for a weekend, it may not move the needle. We want things that move the needle, right?
Well, again, that's what the study would say, is what's your market potential? Who out there would be motivated or interested in this locale? And what kinds of things would they be interested in? All of those questions that you're having have to get answered before you'd want to be making any kind of decisions on a facility. Or if there's, let's say it comes back and says there's not enough of that trade business that would go to this more remote location to make the expenditure worth it. If it comes back and says you can make 10 times the money on it, then you obviously would want to go forward. And that's what the study would try to do, is to evaluate what that market potential is and what it takes to meet it.
Okay. Next item. Number
12, it's been talked about in the past, it's been in some of the past goals about forming a business improvement district. This is something you obviously would have to work with very closely with the Chamber of Commerce. The idea of a business improvement district would be to provide additional funding, whether it's for marketing programs or for business enhancement, whatever it might be, or going out and attracting some additional businesses if you have any vacancies. That would be the pool of money. It is a tax that they would have to agree to, but as a tax, of course, it's completely tax deductible. So, but many communities voluntarily want a BID because the business community kind of controls that BID, not the city.
Right.
And so they're going to be able to use that tax money. The city sets up the parameters under which the money can and should be spent. So they can't just go do it on crazy stuff. But whether they do this marketing plan or that marketing plan really becomes a decision of the BID because it's kind of a separate entity and usually has a separate board.
Okay.
Apparently in the past, the chamber has expressed interest in it, provided how it's structured. And somebody from the city in the past expressed interest in it.
Ron, are we thinking about it the right way if we perceive the BID as a way to build in business diversity in the city?
Yeah, absolutely. It can do all of those things. And it gives a separate source of funding. And if it's effective, the tax to any given business then becomes small enough that it's not a hindrance to their wanting to support it because they can see the benefit, direct benefit.
Okay.
Number 13.
I think I've done 3 business improvement districts in my career, so all of which were, in at least 2 cases, they were pounding on our door demanding we do it.
Number 13.
Okay, 13, lucky 13. Analyze increased water storage, like everyone everywhere. I actually also work with a water district up in Sacramento Basin. And so there's all kinds of issues about building that sustainability during the drought cycles. In your case, you also have some active storage needs, tanks, so that you can keep your pressure up and keep day-to-day flows going. So this would be kind of the combination of both of those, looking at your longer-term drought needs and whether that's repumping water back into the groundwater basin and storing it there until you need it. This would involve regional partners, or I don't see how this could effectively, not the active water storage for day-to-day operations. That would be us. But any longer-term stuff, because you're getting into water rights, just like the pumping issue and the lawsuit. If you've spent any time at water at all, it's really a nasty thing. It always, the real winners in water in California are the lawyers.
Okay, number 14?
14.
That's the library.
Assess the library. What are our needs, and how much space do we need in that process, and then what do we see as
there's
ways
existing
of funding?
studies
There's
already
existing
for
studies
that
we
too.
need to
Yeah, there's quite,
revisit. Yeah.
yes, I'm
So
told
let's
there's
revisit
quite a
those before we
Yeah.
actually conduct a new one.
bit. That's why we show like
Not
11
that much,
hours.
the points were made, not that much has changed. I'm sure those studies are still quite valid because we just haven't, we haven't invested here.
We know there's studies done on several of these things, so it's finding them, reviewing those, and then seeing, are they still relevant? In some cases, they'll be completely relevant. In other cases, they may need some updating. But to the extent we find those studies and they've got good, useful information, let's say we showed a budget for a consultant for $110,000, all of a sudden it might only be $30,000 because we've got most of the data.
Right. Ron, can you help us find a creative way to get that infrastructure money applied to a library?
No, you need a consultant for that.
There are some programs for libraries, and again,
Then we need to go
you've
after
been,
that.
you've been active with some other players, so you might not want to just think us, we might want to think who else has an interest, like community meeting space. If they don't have it where they are, they may say, hey, as long as we can use it, we'll participate. So.
Okay, 15.
Okay.
Access regional opportunities on use and development of water infrastructure.
And
We discussed that already.
that's going the actual step of where can you get more water, if it's at all possible.
We need to do that.
Okay.
And
Well-
the reason I say the second one overlaps, there are some agents, you know, the state of California actually has quite a bit of money set aside. If you're willing to treat your sewer to the point you can put it back in the water pipe, convert it back to potable water.
Well, that's another thing we should look at, because if we could take it back across the river to the city, then we can use it for irrigation or something else.
Well, they're funding programs to actually use it for drinking. You really will put it through a highly hybridized process. Most people aren't comfortable with that thought. But the standards that you can apply to re-injecting it into your groundwater basin are not quite as severe. So there may be some things in there that you can look at. I can tell you that a number of agencies are starting to explore those options because when the drought happens, it's really bad.
Well, I'd like to move forward that we would ask staff, give them the direction on these priorities in the order that we've modified, and proceed. And with regards to the rest of it, let's work on these 15 first.
Okay. Okay, we'll rework all of this for bringing it back to the budget where you can actually incorporate it, and we'll rework those consultant dollars to get those down to what we think the absolute minimum is.
I wanted to ask if Mr. Afonte had any concerns or wanted to add anything on Zoom.
No, I've been listening to all of this, and I have different ideas on a lot of this stuff, but I want to see what they're going to come back with. So at this point, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. Do we have a public comment on this already? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, any other questions on Zoom? We're good to go.
I just want also to point out, I have shared the list of priorities with our grant writers. So we are looking at funding options beyond city coffers.
Okay.
Right.
Always better. Is that adequate for staff?
Sorry?
For 6A, are we complete with it?
Yeah, I think we have the direction we need. Thank you.
Any
Any other feedback from the council? Okay, let's move on to 6B. Discuss an action to create ad hoc budgetary committee for the purpose of reviewing the proposed budget and grant application comprised of 2 city council members and a member of the Measure U committee. And that is, Wendy, you'll lead us through that for staff report?
All right, good evening. So tonight, we're looking for direction to create a budgetary ad hoc committee, and with that, direction to appoint 2 members. One would be the mayor, and the other one would be a council member. And it'll be to serve the purpose of reviewing the 25-26 budget and the grant funding applications. And this is the first year that this council and staff has gone through the 2-year budget cycle. So with that, ask any questions and then
Okay.
decide if you want to create a
Yeah,
committee.
So the mayor and one other of us would be on that ad hoc along with Measure,
Yeah,
member
so,
Measure U.
so in the consent agenda, you guys approved the initial Measure U
Right.
meeting, and so at that meeting, we'll ask the Measure U committee to appoint a member to the budgetary committee if you guys decide to form one. And last year, it was Mayor Infante and
Myself,
yourself.
Yeah. Okay, any volunteers? Are you serious? Robert, you're serious?
And if we could make sure we ask questions of staff and then do public comment before we deliberate. Thank you.
Right. Well, we have somebody that's willing to do it. Let's have public comment. We have a Miss Denise Alamine. If you'd like to speak on item 6B exclusively.
Thank you so much for giving me my orders, Mr. Dave Brown. Appreciate it. I will follow them.
We'll see.
I'm here to talk on Measure U, the ad hoc committee. You haven't decided yet. That's what you're deciding today. On the ballot, the Measure U, what was put on the ballot that we were voting taxes to for potholes and street repair and flammable brush. But here tonight, I've heard, it seems and appears that this money is can go anywhere. Studies, money pits. It's like this guy that's been here presenting this wonderful, everything's going to go okay, and we're going to stay in budget, and we're going to help you. I've heard it so many times, and he should be here in November when we're voting and voting on these measures, and he should be here and tell us about all of the studies that we're going to be paying for and not getting the potholes repaired. But he only comes after we've passed the measure and the taxes is there and we no longer want to use it for what it was on the ballot for. I don't even know why we're discussing it. Measure U is for potholes and to get back bushes, to burn them back. Do we need somebody to do a study to get that done? No, we don't. And again, I'm going to say, November, we can vote 3 of these people out, and we can get some people in here that will spend our Measure U money properly, not on studies, not on people who come in and give a good talk about how they're going to spend $1.2 million to tell us what we need. And then on the out of his next voice, he says, there are so many studies that have been done here that they could use. That means that those studies have been paid for, and we have done nothing with them. Can we get some studies out of the graveyard and maybe fix those before we bring in new studies? You guys ever thought about that? No, because you are here and you are spending my money like it is your money. and it is not your money. I would like to spend my own money. So please, can we get some potholes fixed? Can we get the pickleball court fixed before we get a bunch of studies done? Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment from anyone else that's local here in the room or on Zoom? No comments on Zoom? Okay, bring it back to the council. We'll close public comment. Concerns or questions about this item?
Why can't we go forward with the same ad hoc committee that we had before? There's some consistency, continuity, and approach, and
You can, but an ad hoc committee is, the length of term for the committee is the length of term for the reasons that you do it. So they're not a standing committee, so every year you have to appoint 2 members.
I'm open to any motion.
If somebody else wants to do it, I'm fine with that.
Well, I wouldn't mind doing it, but I did it last year, so I'd like to have some.
you want a relief.
No, I just think that it should be more transparent and it's not just a group of 2. So I think having somebody different is to the benefit of our community. Okay.
Okay.
Well, that being said, I'll make a motion that we create the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Afonte and Mr. Clark and one of the members from the Measure U.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Roll call then, please.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Rona.
Yes.
Councilmember Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. We'll go to item 6C. Okay. This is discussion and direction to staff regarding a request by RATP Development for a contract amendment to include rate structure modifications and rate increases to operate the San Ynez Valley Transit Service. And a staff report by Roger.
Can we get the, was that? Okay. I've prepared a presentation, I promise. Not working? You got it? Okay, there we go. Just in case I need my laser pointer. Okay. So thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brown. So this item is to review a request by RATP Dev, which is the transit operator, is the firm that actually drives the buses, employs all and does all the dispatching and everything else. So the current contract, it's a 5-year contract with a possible extension for another 2 to 3 years. The request for proposal went out in 2021 for the 5-year contract because the contract had expired. The proposal was received in November 2021, and then after scoring and sending it to, as required, sending it to Caltrans for approval, we got it back and we brought it to council and we awarded the contract in May of 2022 to start the fiscal year 22-23. So the contract is based on a revenue hour billing rate structure, which is typical for a lot of transit agencies. What that means is every hour that the bus is on there, they get a dollar rate. So, or any hour that any vehicle is providing any sort of transit service, a dial a ride or other things. So as the services, as the level of service and the need for service goes up, the cost goes up. As it goes down, the cost goes down. Part of the challenge with that and part of the request was to establish a fixed rate to cover some of the universal costs, the costs for keeping the lights on, having the administrative staff, the dispatch and that sort of stuff, and then also some of the mechanics and other things that they employ. So they asked for a fixed rate structure, which makes sense, and then a variable cost-based rate structure, which a lower variable rate cost, which would allow us that if, for example, let's say we wanted to add another route and it increased our revenue hours that were required, well, we're now paying more for the people that are behind the desks and dispatching and doing everything else because we're paying per hour for the buses that are on the route. So, so this actually protects us, but it also protects them because if, another pandemic happens or something like that and our services go greatly down, drivers aren't on the road, there's no cost for the drivers, but they still have an overhead that they need to cover. So it protects them as well. So we are agreeable to that, but also when they proposed that, we said, okay, well, we're all ears. We want to be a good partner. They also came in with a request for an increase to address unforeseen escalation, cost escalations, mainly inflationary. Labor rates for the drivers are very competitive right now. It's hard to keep any drivers and hard to attract drivers. Also, their insurance rates have gone up quite a bit. Cost of materials, tires, and all kinds of stuff. Now, this does not include gas. We pay the gas separate, so I just want to make sure that's clear. But the requested contract increase with the variable rate structure results in about $103,000 for this upcoming fiscal year is what their request is, and which is about a 13.5% increase over what they're due next year. They are due a 4% increase from year to year. What they are proposing is their inflationary increase rate for the next 3 years would only go up 3.5%. So a big hit this time, much greater, but then the next 2 years would only be 3.5% rather than 4%. So by the numbers, so here is the current contract. Our variable rate is 62.54. For the revenue hours, we're projected to pay them for running the service about $764,000. Now, with the variable rate, as you can see, it's a lower variable rate, but there's a fixed rate that's there. And you add those up, and that's where you get the $103,000 increase. And then year to year, over the next 3 years, it's looking like that difference would go up by a couple thousand. So 2,000 next year, and then about 5,000 a year after that. So, but that is what the request is. Now, moving forward, we're looking for some information because in order to bring any sort of contract like this forward, we got to go to Caltrans and get approval. I didn't want to do that and then come to you and say, well, Caltrans already approved it. What do you guys think? So I wanted to make sure you guys have, kind of first bite of the apple here. And then also let us know. We've been negotiating with them. They did reduce their initial ask they cut it in half about. But just market-wide, industry-wide, I mean, coming out of when they did enter, I think there is some validity to where they're saying that their costs have increased, and it was, to this level was completely unforeseen. But if we can agree on something that this is something we'll be willing to entertain, then we can send it to Caltrans, have them approve it, and then we come back to council for an actual contract amendment. Now, how we would pay for this, we've already looked into some additional funding source. The county has adjusted some of their rates, so we've accounted for some of that money. but it's looking like we might have to, over the next budgetary cycle, with a $103,000 increase for these operations. Our current budget is projecting to be about $30,000 in the red, which we'd have to dip into our reserves, which we do have ample reserves, but it's not a place we really want to be. We'd rather have a cushion. But, you know, the transit revenues that do come in from the various transit sources, various federal and state agencies do continue to go up. So we would hope to make that up over the next couple of years. And that concludes staff's presentation, and I'm open for, happy to answer any questions. I do believe Wes Cruz is on the line, who represents RATP Dev, and he can answer any questions as far as what they are up against. He can speak directly as far as their organization goes. And with that, I'm open it up to council for questions.
Thank you. First, what's the ridership annually?
That's a very good question. I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
Wes, do you have?
Mark, he's got his hand up.
Not offhand.
Okay. Dominic, Dominic is also from RATP Dev. He might have a better idea as well.
If you give me a minute or two, I can look into some numbers and then, signify that I'm ready to give them.
Yeah, I do routinely hear that our numbers are. I do know that the ridership has fully recovered from before COVID, and we're one of the only transit agencies that are we have grown past where we were before 2020.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a baseline as to how much of that $130,000 per person or per rider.
Okay.
That's where I was going with that. And I want to know, too, what's the impetus for us renegotiating a 5-year contract when you're into it?
Well,
what's the motivation for us to want to modify our?
Well, the motivation is we want to work with our consultants and make sure that they're whole. A 5-year contract is an awful long time to enter in a contract. And they can, if they say, in our contract, if they decide, you know what, this city's not willing to help us out and we're losing money like a sieve, I'll give you 30 days and you no longer have an operator, you have drivers for your buses and a dispatcher for your buses. So they can walk if they want to. We certainly don't want that, and we would be scrambling to find someone else to pick up the reins, certainly within 30 days as well. But that is a possibility. So we want to be open and accommodating as much as we can. Given the revenues that we are receiving, us and our partners.
That's all I got.
Roger, it's interesting that in the contract there is accommodation and there is an accounting or consideration for inflationary change at 4% per year. So they're entitled already per contract at 12%. At the end of contract, they will have realized 12% inflationary increases.
That's correct.
So have they shared with you what money they're losing at their current rates?
They have not shared with those numbers with us.
Have they shared with you their cost increases specifically, because they mentioned the wage increase and the insurance increases?
We've had a few discussions, but they have not actually given me raw numbers.
We're a public agency. We need that level of transparency for the way we're spending the public's money, which has been pointed out several times tonight.
Okay. Well, we could certainly,
We need that transparency before we proceed.
Okay.
Can I just one more question, because there's no mention of a retroactive, but there's a table that says true up in the spreadsheet, which sort of tripped over. Is there an ask for a reconciliation from past year?
Which spreadsheet is this? Is
The
this
rate proposal table?
okay? The one they provided. I think that they're calling this this request as their true up to kind of Again,
Okay.
I don't have the numbers, so I
So,
don't know if they're
I'm struggling with
inflated and they're
this.
trying to,
Yeah,
make up for lost revenues.
I want to see some
or
math
not.
because they're asking for a 24% increase for the remaining 3 years of the contract when they were entitled to 12%. So it's 17, your packet says 13.5 plus the 4% inflation for the third year, and then the 4% for the fourth year, and then 4% for the fifth year, which we would reduce down to 3.5. So it's 17.5 plus 3.5 increase next year, and another 3.5 increase from that.
So 20 and a half,
So it's 24.5.
20,
Yeah. 17.5 plus 3.5 plus 3.5.
okay.
Yeah. That's a lot. It's a 25% increase.
It's, yes, I'm, not tonight, that's why we're here. If it was a minimal increase, we wouldn't even be coming here. So that's why we're here, to
So
discuss this with you.
Can we
So-
let's get a little more transparency on the cost impact that they are feeling and get closer to, or as close, if we aren't already right at, the transfer of those cost impacts. That's where we should be negotiating to.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, if.
We don't
so-
want
so-
them to be losing money either, but we shouldn't be, the public shouldn't be losing money to keep our contractor in, in a profitability space, okay?
I understand. Okay.
Quick question, Roger.
Yes, sir.
I have no way of raising my hand on this silly thing these days. I was under the impression that the transportation group was going to convert their vehicles to electric, and we were going to put in electric charging stations over on parking lot 5 in order to support that. Is that cost covered in any of this, or is that an additional cost? Where does that money come from?
That money is coming, good question. So the development of parking lot 5 with charging stations for the future electric fleet, plus some charging stations for some city vehicles, that will be covered under. It was under the budget to be covered under some transit monies, but also general fund. But and then a APCD grant. But we did recently negotiate with for some additional monies that became available from the state for about $900,000 to fully fund that project. So this is not going to hit any of the other transit funds, and we should be fully funded with just the APCD grant and it's a TIRSIP grant from that's going to be processed through SBCAG.
Okay, so APCD covers the vehicle cost. The charging units are on us.
No, APCD covers $150,000 for the development of the parking lot.
Oh, okay.
There's also $900,000 that's being made available for the development of the parking lot as well. So based on our budgetary numbers that we have, which we should have a design for that project, I should have had it last week, but we're going to be going out to bid relatively quick, and the money's become available this month, the $900,000. So we should be under construction hopefully by the end of June, or we'll be out to bid probably May. So June, July is when we'll be under construction of that project, and it should be fully funded without hitting any of the other transit, any of our transit funds or any general fund.
And you had stated that we had to pay for the gas in the existing vehicles, so the presumption is that we will not have that payment in the future. So it's going to reduce some of the costs for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and also in the budget is a certain amount of money for paying rent on the current space, but we're getting ready to, I'm receiving bids on Friday for the remodel of the transit office space. So once they move in there, that's a cost that will go down as well. So again, you make a budget, you got to make some assumptions, but you kind of bank on things, but you plan for the worst, hope for the best.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll go to.
Can I just say one more thing on this? Because something's nagging at me. So we have an actual consumption model right now because we are paying for a rate per hour served. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And anytime you convert away from an actuals consumption model and you convert to a baseline, that baseline cost is usually the profitability. It usually is. So, I'm going to say it again. Please ask them to be transparent about our costs, because that baseline then should still be very close to the percentage profit they should make. Not that I'm dictating what they should make, but it should be in alignment with a public service.
Okay. So they're online now. They're online now, and they're hearing you. So
Good.
Depending on the direction from the rest of council, sounds like we'll be having some further conversations.
Thank you.
We have public comment next, and we have Denise Alameen as a speaker slip in.
Do I have any instructions from you, Mayor Brown?
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Oh, my God, Elizabeth, thank you so much. I've never had a presentation presented without any figures. I walk the streets every day for exercise, and I see the buses running, and I've never seen a full bus. I've never seen a half-full bus. I've never seen more than 3 people on the bus. So how can you have a 5-year contract with someone, and then 1 year into it, you say you don't want a 5-year contract, you want more money? Well, then why do we have a contract? Then we should be day by day or week by week or month by month. Is this extortion? If we don't give them the money, then they're going to let us go in 30 days? 3 people won't ride the bus. I don't think it'll be that hard. I think we can Uber everybody where they have to go for less than we're paying these people. This is a disgrace for someone to come and give a presentation without figures. Come on, people. They should tell us numbers. We are spending money here again, and I'm seriously upset because I have to put this check in the mail tomorrow, and I don't want to put it in there. It's a lot of money. We are spending money, my money, and you're giving a presentation and they don't even know how many people ride the bus? They don't even know you don't know it, you didn't ask them, and nobody here cares? Just give them a raise of, 12%? Are you kidding me? 24% over 5 years? Why do we make a contract with people if they can just come in and tell us what they want and change the contract? Why are we doing it, people? Come on. Come on, please. Stop spending money like it's your personal money. If you do this for your bills at home, and if this is the way you want to live, and if this is the way you do your things, that's fine. But you have been voted in to spend my money and the community members here's money, and you should be more responsible. You should have more numbers. This is pathetic at best.
Is there anyone from Zoom or other people in the room? No comments on Zoom, so I'll bring it back to the council for direction to our staff. Any follow-ups?
I just wonder if, a representative of the agency would want to, present or have anything else to add.
Our vendor? Is there any? Are they still on?
Wes, do you have anything else to add? Oh, he's on mute.
Maybe they have nothing to add, I don't know.
No. Oh, there he is.
Okay, I'm on mute. All right. No, well, we are definitely willing to be very transparent when it comes down to this. I can very well understand the questions behind this, and we're more than welcome to open up our books, as we have been in the very beginning, into what actually has transpired. For us, in regards to the ridership in itself has increased over the last couple of years here. Okay, and also with the California laws, wages, et cetera, driving up, we've had very difficulties in actually retaining and recruitment quality operators here as well. So, it's not to a point where we're trying to, as Madam Council Member there mentioned about profitability, when it comes down to the fixed cost, it's mainly for us trying to stay afloat in business. We've been in the red since then for several months, and we're simply asking to make us whole and have the ability to run the business here. But again, we're willing to be transparent and willing to provide our financials and open up our books in order to show you exactly where we're coming from.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
Thank you, Wes.
Okay. I think do you need further direction, or is that adequate?
No, not at this point, it sounds like, or
Okay.
we're going to go back and renegotiate and then come on back?
After you have the numbers to do so, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, then I think we're finished for item C. I wanted to make a clerical, not necessarily clerical, but a comment earlier, that was public comment about approving the Site C zoning change. That was incorrect and inaccurate. Our consent items only pertain to Site B and D. So I want to make sure that that was put back. Indeed, Site C, there has been no zoning change or submitted or otherwise for that site. Would that be a fair statement? Yes.
I also wanted to add that the property taxes that we're all paying this month don't go toward transit, bus, that's gas taxes, federal and other state monies. That is not, property taxes don't contribute a dime to that.
Thank you.
And if I could add, I think we'll be hearing about Lot C before every meeting for the next so many months. I think it's an issue.
I just wanted to be
Residents are
technically
concerned, and so it's on our table most every meeting, I bet.
I just wanted to be
And I understand.
technically correct on that item. So if there's nothing else, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:06. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Roger.